Welcome. Hello. Hello, Year 6. Come on in. My name's Mr. Wilson. I am one of the science teachers at King's Leadership Academy in Warrington. And it's awesome to meet you guys. Yeah, thank you so much for coming along and tuning into this video. I can't wait to talk to you guys about science and all amazing things that we do as part of our science lessons at King's Leadership Academy Warrington. I know you're all super excited to come along and join the school and see what's going on. And I can tell you now that science is going to be an absolutely amazing topic. And I can't wait to show you some of the guys and give you guys a little bit of a taster session as to the sort of things that we do in science and the sort of stuff that you'll be doing next year, and it's going to be really, really good, and I'm really excited. So yeah, let's get going. So when you join us in September, we'll be part of Learning Cycle 1, and I'm sure you've heard loads about the different learning cycles and how we have 5 of them in a year, and science is obviously, again, is no different. And in science, in Year 7, those 5 learning cycles, you will do 5 completely different topics, all across completely different areas of science. And in Learning Cycle 1, as it currently is planned, we're planning to do nutrition and health. So we're going to be talking about all things to do with healthy eating and nutrition and making sure you get the right balance of foods in your diet, whether that's going to give you lots of protein from meats, fish, eggs, and milk, or making sure that you get lots of carbohydrates from like rice and other grains and potatoes. Or maybe it's things like vitamins and minerals and getting them from fresh fruits and vegetables, or calcium in milk, okay, or iron from red meat. Like all these ideas of nutrition we'll talk about in Learning Cycle 1. And obviously, if we're going to talk about food, well, then the next thing we're going to want to talk about is how that food is processed in the human body. And we'll look at the process of digestion. And we're going to go into loads of different details as to how all these organs all work together to turn all this yummy food into a healthy human person. And then after that, we're going to go on to a slightly different topic within this idea of nutrition and health. We're going to look at the human heart and what we call the circulatory system. And this is the topic that we're really going to focus on in our taster session today. We're going to look at the heart and the circulatory system and give you guys a little bit of a sample of the sort of things that we're going to look at in our science lessons. And then the last part of Learning Cycle 1, we're going to look at healthy living and about how do we keep ourselves on top of all this. So we're talking about food, talking about like certain things we need to avoid as part of our daily lives to make sure we stay in our tip-top condition, and sort of the negative effects that can happen if we consume the wrong things or not enough of certain things. And that's going to be a really nice introduction to sort of the scientific nature of our lessons at King's Warrington. So yeah, it's really, really exciting to see you guys all coming along. And like I say, we're going to talk a little bit today about the heart and the circulatory system as part of this Learning Cycle 1 content, as a little bit of a taster or teaser session for you guys. And like I say, really looking forward to this one. It's going to be really, really good fun. So let's dive into an example of what a science lesson is like at King's Warrington. Oh, this is going to be good. Okay. So, as with all our lessons at King's, we have a lesson hypothesis. And our one for today's lesson is the heart. Our heart has one job. Okay, that's our hypothesis, and we'll test that throughout today. You may have some ideas about that already, which is brilliant. And I love it when we come to science lessons with questions, with a curiosity, with an intrigue to figure out what all this is about. So today, we're posing this statement: our heart has one job, and we're really going to dig into what it's like. Okay, and also with all our lessons, we have success criteria that we're going to try and complete throughout the lesson. So for this lesson, it's recall the role of the heart, describe how blood travels around the body, and explain why the importance of the heart to the body is that valuable. Explain the importance of the heart to the body. And then we're going to look at some of our keywords. So we're going to look at the keywords circulate, oxygen, carbon dioxide, glucose, arteries, and veins. Don't worry if you've not heard of any of those words before. That is the idea of this lesson, is that these are the keywords for this lesson that we are going to teach you. And obviously on our first slide, as always, when you come into a lesson, there is a do now. So this is a task that you'll get to do, okay? As soon as you get your books, you'd write your hypothesis, you'd write your keywords, you'd write the date, and then you'd start to have a go at the do now, which for this, obviously for this task, I'm going to help us out with a little bit. So What other words does this word make you think of? This is our do now. So we've asked the question, what other words does this word make you think of? And the word we've got today is circulation. Okay, so I'm not looking for the meaning of this word, but what other words does this word make you think of? I'll give you 30 seconds to have a think and have a look at this word, and what other words does it make you think of? Okay, interesting. Right, so hopefully we've got some ideas of some words that this word makes us think of, and I'm going to show you some of the things that it makes me think of, and sort of the ideas that we're going to look at. So, the first thing I would have looked at is I'd have looked at these first four letters, circ, and that makes me think of the word circle. Okay, or to go around in a circle, like you circle around something, you go around in a circle. Okay, if you're circling around, like you might circle, like the earth circles around the sun. Okay, it goes around it in a circle. Okay, and then the other thing I'd have looked at is I'd have looked at this ending shun. Tion. There's loads of words I know that end in shun, like action and vibration and gestation, okay? Or loads of words that end in this shun idea. And this here, if you are good at English or have done lots of practice in your literacy lessons, you'll know that this turns a word into a verb. So circulation is the verb, thanks to this shun, of going in a circle. Okay, so it's the verb of taking something in a circle. So circulation is this idea of going in a circle or going in a loop. Well, that's going to link to our sort of lesson about the heart. Because circulation is this idea of things going in a loop. And well, thankfully, all our blood, which is going around our body, is in one continuous big loop. It goes around our body in a circle, okay, as part of a cycle. And that's really, really good. Obviously, we're losing loads of blood. We don't have to make loads of new blood. Okay, our blood can stay refreshed inside our body and it's pumped around by the heart. So this leads us into our first VIF. So VIF stands for very important fact, and they're incredibly useful in all our subjects here at King's Warrington. Okay, and whenever you see these in your lessons, your first thought is to wait for the teacher to explain them, and then to make sure you write them down as neatly as you can in your notes. So this VIF is the first one we'll look at today, this very important fact. It says that circulation means that something is flowing around in a circle or loop. And in the body, there is the circulatory system, which is a group of organs that work together to carry blood around the body. So you sort of see how this is linking together with our do now. We've got this circulation idea, which is the word we just broke down. We said it again in our notes. It means something flows around in a circle or loop. And then this diagram over here is showing us a picture of the circulatory system, which is this group of organs. So we've got the heart right here in the middle. You can also see the outlines of these organs here, which are the lungs. You may also see that all these sort of like vessels of blood, these blood vessels, we've got the red ones, or the arteries as they're properly called, and the blue ones, which are the veins, are all traveling around every single part of our body. There's some going up to the brain. There's some down here in the stomach, some going down to the intestines. Okay, then obviously going into all our muscles in the body. Okay, so we've got arteries, veins, the heart, and the lungs of really, really important parts of our circulatory system. Okay, and it's a really, really, really valuable thing to understand, and it's a really interesting part of science that we're going to look at continuing through today. So in a lesson, we'd wait for you guys to make sure you'd have that down, and we're going to continue now to talk more about how this circulatory system works. Don't worry about writing this down now. This is just a nice fact for us to move on with. So here is a very simplified diagram of that circulatory system. We've taken this crazy diagram here and we've simplified it down so we can start to understand its function. And you can see we've started to got a few bits. In the middle here, we've got our heart, we've got our lungs, and we've got all the other cells in the body. So our stomach, our leg muscles, our arm muscles, our brain, okay, anywhere else that's going to need blood, which pretty much all of our body, is going to be in sort of categorized in this section here, okay? And then you see again, we've got these red and we've got these blue blood vessels. Okay, and the red and the blue signifies something quite important. It's a very common use of color, okay, that we have in the circulatory system. Whenever you look at diagrams, you'll probably be using red and blue. And they represent different types of blood. We've got oxygenated blood, which is always in red. And that is the blood that returns from the lungs to the heart before going to the rest of the body. So you can sort of see that it's the oxygenated blood is coming from the lungs, being pumped through the heart to the entire rest of the body. And this is the oxygenated blood. Okay, oxygenated because it's carrying oxygen. Okay, and oxygen is a very, very, very useful thing in the human body. We breathe it in from the air, it enters our lungs, and then from our lungs, it enters the bloodstream, goes to the heart before it's transported to all of the cells in the human body so they can use the oxygen for energy to carry out valuable processes. Because as you probably know, if you hold your breath for too long, you begin to feel a bit faint, you can't work as well, and obviously eventually you have to breathe back in again, because that oxygen is really important for our body to function properly. Okay, it's a process called respiration, which we're not going to go into too much today, but we'll learn about in Learning Cycle 1. We'll look at respiration and how our body uses this oxygen to get energy and for us to go around and run and jump, play rugby, play netball, dancing, whatever it is that we're doing, okay? Our body needs oxygen to do it because it needs energy to be able to do those things. So this is the red side of it all. And this is on one half of the heart. One half of the heart you see is designated to this oxygenated blood. We then see on the other side of our diagram that it's turned blue. Now, obviously, the blood doesn't turn blue. This is a sort of common misconception that blood is actually blue. That is a lie, okay? When you look at your veins in your arms, you may say, oh, our veins look blue. That's nothing to do with the actual blood inside of it. I can guarantee you, if that was to get cut, which would be a very unfortunate accident, the blood that comes out would be red. Okay, blood itself is red, okay? We tend to use these colors because veins do have a slight blue lining to them. Okay, so it's the actual, like the sort of the pipes themselves, the vessels themselves that are slightly blue in color. So that's why we use blue, because our veins tend to have this sort of like bluish tinge to them from when we look at them through our skin. So on the other side, when they come out of the body cells and go back to the heart and then to the lungs, this is called deoxygenated blood. Okay, and this returns from the body to the heart before going to the lungs. So it does the opposite of the oxygenated blood. It's deoxygenated now, okay, because it's run out of oxygen. All the oxygen's been removed from it in the body. Okay, so now it's got no oxygen, so it's got to go back to the heart because the heart acts like a big pump, and the pump then takes it out of the heart to the lungs. Okay, and we have this sort of like double loop system. Okay, we've got this loop here going back through the lungs and this loop here going through the body cells. Okay, so like a double action system here. We go through the heart twice on different sides. Deoxygenated blood comes from the body cells into the heart and then to the lungs. The oxygenated blood comes out of the lungs into the heart and then from the heart to the body cells. And obviously this works because the lungs transfer oxygen into the blood. So it goes from deoxygenated here and blue to red over here as it gains oxygen. Like the oxygen we breathe in is transferred in my lungs into my bloodstream, turning this deoxygenated blood that's just arrived into oxygenated blood when it leaves. And then at the other end of it, this oxygenated blood is taken. The oxygen is taken from the blood, used by the cells to release energy. So oxygenated blood comes in, the oxygen is removed so my body can do things like lift weights, like type on my keyboard, okay, like, I don't know, even just something like eating food, like picking a burger up and putting it in my face, that is going to take energy for me to do so. So I'm going to need oxygen in my different muscles for that to happen. And obviously, if the oxygenated blood comes in, deoxygenated blood comes out because the oxygen is removed. Okay? So this is sort of like a very nice understanding of looking at the circulatory system. The blood stays in the system, it's pumped all the way around. It gains oxygen in the lungs, goes to the heart, pumped through the heart on one side, and comes out to the rest of the body. It could go to the brain, it could go to the stomach if you've eaten a big meal, it could go to your legs if you're running a race, it could go to your arms, like I said, if you're doing an arm wrestle or anything like that. Depending on where your body needs that energy, this oxygenated blood is going to be pumped to it. Okay, and our heart has this incredible job of pumping this all to the rest of the body. Our body then uses the oxygen, and the blood is left deoxygenated, so lacking in oxygen, and it returns to the heart before being pumped to the lungs. And then you see this cycle, this circulatory system continues, and it circulates around and around and around continuously, happily going about its job. And that's the circulatory system. And I think it's really neat. But let's dig into a bit more about the key of all this, which is the heart, the pump that keeps it all going. Absolutely vital, absolutely 100% needed for all human life to continue. So let's look at the heart a little bit. Very briefly, let's look at the heart. So here we go. We've got a zoomed in picture of the heart. You can see we've got these arrows here represent the blood coming in and out. So we've got the oxygenated blood over here, and we've got the deoxygenated blood over here. Right, so there's a couple of things you might notice. The first thing you might notice is you might be shouting, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wilson, you've got your left and right the wrong way round. Well, interesting you say that. Well, for the heart, we do label them the wrong way round. We say that this is the left-hand side of the heart, and we say that this is the right-hand side of the heart. Okay? That's because if you imagine that this was your heart, okay, the left and right would be the opposite way round. So it's as if we're looking at a patient. So if we were looking at a person, this would be their left-hand side, and this would be their right-hand side. Okay? But as it stands, okay, when we're looking at it, we're imagining it, this is sort of like a patient's heart or somebody else's heart. Like when you look at somebody else, their left is on your right and their right is on your left. So again, that can be a little bit confusing, but always remember that when you look at the heart, the left is on the wrong side and the right is on the wrong side as well. And you see we have these four parts labeled. We've got what we call the right atrium, the right ventricle, the left atrium, and the left ventricle. And the atriums are these little pockets at the top of the heart, and the ventricles are these big rooms at the bottom of the heart. And in between them, we have these flaps of muscle tissue called valves. And essentially, what happens here is that the blood will come into the heart, into the atrium. It'll then be squeezed through the atrium into the ventricle. This valve will close because it won't allow the blood to flow back out the heart in the wrong way. And then when the heart squeezes and contracts again, all the blood is forced up through this valve out to the rest of the body. And it's the same on the right-hand side. The blood comes into the atrium, is then squeezed down through this valve into the ventricle and fills up the ventricle. Again, this valve is designed that it can't go back against it. The valve will close, and then it's squeezed again for the second time and pushed up out this way. And obviously this will go towards the lungs. Our deoxygenated blood goes out of the right-hand side of the heart to the lungs to then become oxygenated, comes back in here before going to the rest of the body. Okay, so sort of zooming in on our heart here. So atriums and ventricles. The way I always remember this is that when I look at my heart, I remember that I've got atriums and I've got ventricles. And I always remember that my ventricles look like a V. The V at the bottom of the heart. Like here, there's the V here, okay, at the bottom of the heart. And my atrium, well, I think of another word I know that begins with A, is the attic. And I know the attic in a house is always at the top. It's in the roof of the house. So my atrium, which is the attic, is up here at the top. So I've got my attic room up here, and I've got my ventricle down here that looks like a V. And obviously I remember that my right and the left are the wrong way round. So I've got left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium up at the top, like the attic, and the right ventricle down here because of the V shape. And again, the blue and the red colors help me to remember deoxygenated blood on this side, oxygenated blood on that side. And that's sort of like a very brief understanding of how the heart functions. It functions by a multitude of different sort of like squeezing and compression and expanding motions to allow blood to enter the atrium and the ventricle before it's expelled outwards. Okay. And when we're in school, if you get really lucky and your science teacher allows it, you may have a look at an actual heart and you may cut one open to have a look at all these little parts. And that'd be a really fun scientific experiment that we could do to dissect a heart. It won't be a human heart, it'll be the heart of an animal, probably a sheep, but it has a very similar shape and function. Okay, same function and a very similar shape. So we can actually look at these atriums and ventricles and these valves, and your teacher will explain it all about you. Okay, but obviously that's something that we'll talk about in the future, but it's something to get excited for, to get a bit of hands-on science done. Before we finish, I've got a couple more things I want to mention. First of all, a couple of fun facts about the heart that I think are crazy. Okay, the first ridiculous fact is that your heart weighs between 200 and 430 grams. Okay, the younger you are, obviously, the lighter it will weigh. And obviously, as you get older, your heart will grow in size a little bit, like any other muscle would. To put that into perspective, that's roughly the size of 1 to 2 Big Macs. So if you've ever had a Big Mac before, if you've seen a Big Mac, okay, that Big Mac, if you hold it in your hands, is about the same weight as your heart, or potentially even 2 Big Macs. Okay, so if you're a fully grown adult, you're probably closer to 2 full Big Macs in weight for your heart, which I think is ridiculous. It puts into perspective just how much muscle and how strong your heart is. Second amazing fact, your heart beats on average 100,000 times a day. It's incredible, right? You have no control over that. Your heart beats just to keep you going. You don't tell your heart to beat faster or slower, okay? Your heart just keeps on beating. And on average, that's around 100,000 times a day. Unbelievable. Third incredible fact of the heart. Your heart pumps roughly 9,000 liters of blood every single day. 9,000 liters of blood will go through your heart. All the F1 cars in a Formula One race will use around 4,500 liters of 4,500 liters of fuel. So essentially, for 2 races, they'll use 9,000 liters of fuel. That's all the F1 cars for 2 complete races. And that's the same amount of blood that your heart pumps every day. Whew, that's incredible. Your heart's doing incredible amounts of work, pumping all this blood around your body. Doing so much of it. And remember, it's only the sort of the weight of around 1 to 2 Big Macs. And the last fact, which I think staggers beyond belief. I think it's hard to comprehend this fact. But your body is filled with around 60,000 miles of blood vessels, of veins, arteries, and really, really tiny vessels called capillaries. All these tiny pipes and networks taking your blood to every inch and centimeter and millimeter of your body. 60,000 miles is enough to stretch around the entire Earth 2.5 times. What? That's ridiculous. No way. That's incredible. But yeah, if you painstakingly, and this is incredibly impossible to do, but if you were able to extract all of the blood vessels in a person, all their arteries, all their veins, all their tiny, tiny, tiny capillaries, okay, and laid them out one after the other, it would be enough to stretch round the entire Earth 2.5 times, right round the equator of the Earth. Ridiculous. It's so incredible. The human body has so many amazing facts inside of it that we can learn and unravel as part of science. And hopefully you've picked up loads and loads of questions about science, okay, that you're willing to ask. And I say this is super interesting. And like I say, I'm sure Miss Perch will be able to get it for you, or Miss Good will be able to get it for you. But if you need it and you have any of these questions, please feel free to email me or any of the other science teachers in the school, okay? Because these are amazing, okay? My email address, if you have any questions, is a.wilson@kingswarrington.com. Send me some awesome science questions if you have any, okay? That's a.wilson@kingswarrington.com, okay? Again, if you're struggling to get hold of that email, please let Miss Perch or Miss Good know if you have any questions, and they'll send them on to me. Okay, obviously, don't bombard them loads of times, okay? But yeah, hopefully you've got some really, really awesome thoughts about science and some really interesting questions that you want to know and get the answers to, and I'm more than happy to give them to you. But just one last thing before we go, I've got to give you a little bit of a task that you can have a go at, just to try your hand at a little bit of science. So one thing that I think is really important for all science is to do experiments. And one thing that is really important when we do all these really important science experiments is that we are safe. And every single science teacher will be the exact same. They will make sure that every single thing we do is safe and make sure that every single thing is important. And one of the first lessons we'll do at our school is we will go through all the science lab safety rules. Certain things about talking about protective equipment, like safety glasses, lab coats, and gloves. Talking about the equipment we'll use for every experiment. So things like Bunsen burners, which we can use to heat things up, okay, or to sort of like ignite certain experiments. Some of the glassware that we'll use that obviously can cause problems if it gets broken or dropped. And there's actually, some of it can be quite sharp. Other things we'll use is some chemicals. We'll use some dangerous chemicals in the science labs, and they'll be able to be, if we use them safely, we'll be able to show some really, really awesome bits of science. Also, things as simple as making sure the bags and chairs are out of the way. Make sure that obviously when we're doing practicals, we're always standing up. Make sure that long hair and like ties are out of the way so they don't drop into any chemicals or accidentally get set on fire if they're over a Bunsen burner. We don't want those to happen. So we want to make sure that they're tied away. Our ties are tucked inside our shirts, okay? Or the long hair is tied back just to make sure that we have no accidents. Because that's something we want to make sure we avoid. Things like injuries, burns, breakages, and spillages. We want to make sure that we avoid all of these. Okay? But obviously at the same time, if they do happen, we want people to tell the teachers about it. You won't get in trouble for any of it. Okay? As long as you're acting accordingly. And obviously we will then be able to deal with it appropriately. Okay? If you spill a little bit of a chemical, please tell your teacher, because then obviously they could come over and obviously deal with it and clean it up and make sure nobody's injured or hurt in any way. Okay? So like I say, there's just some quick ideas of the science lab safety. I'll leave them on the screen, so if you wanted to, you could pause it, because this might be useful for your little takeaway task. Again, we'll go through all of this when we get into school properly, and your teachers will go through it with you personally. But your takeaway task is this. I would like you to create me an Aspire acronym poster for safety in the science lab. So as you know, we have the Aspire values at King's, A, S, P, I, R, and E, which obviously normally stand for aspiration and achievement, self-awareness, professionalism, integrity, respect, and endeavor. But what I would like you to do is to create a new version of the Aspire acronym, but for safety in the science lab, where each of these will sort of reflect a different part of science lab safety. So an example for that, and I'll give you a free example here, is the R. The R could be, remember to always wear safety glasses. Okay? And that would be an example of using this R to create a science safety acronym poster. So I'll leave that on the screen for you. Okay? And like I said before, I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I'm really looking forward to meeting some of you guys in September or whenever we get back into school. Really looking forward to teaching you guys all about some of the aspects of science. I hope that you've got something out of today's session. I hope you've learned a little bit about the heart or the circulatory system. And like I said, if you've got any questions about anything that you've seen today, or you're just excited about learning science, please send me an email. Same if you're not sure about how to do this task, or if you get some great examples of these posters done, please email them to me at a.wilson@kingswarrington.com. That's a.wilson@kingswarrington.com. You guys have been amazing. Thank you so much for watching and getting to this stage of the video. I really am excited to see what you guys produce for these posters. I'm really excited to see any questions you guys send me via email. Thank you so much for coming along today. And take care. Have a nice day. Look after yourselves.